Hi, I'm Christian Fossler. I'm a graduate assistant athletic trainer here at Concord, and I work with the football and baseball teams. So today I will be presenting my project titled Human Health and Development Program in Secondary Schools. Basically, what it is implementing sexual education courses into the secondary school system. So let's get started. So just a quick overview, we will be focusing on Ottawa County in Michigan, which as you can see in the picture, it's over on the west coast there, west coast of Michigan, that is. So the setting and health focus is sexual education in secondary schools as well as at home. And our target population will be children in Ottawa County, Michigan, as well as their parents, because they will be involved as well. So the school-based intervention will last one school year, or about 9 months, and the home-based intervention lasts about 8 weeks, and that is geared more towards the parents. So, based on the concepts from the social cognitive theory, we're going to be really focusing on like personal and environmental and behavioral factors of the relationships between the parents and their children. So basically what we're aiming to make change to are creating a new outlook on sex ed for both the children and the parents. Environmentally, we're going to implement standards from local, state, and national levels, and I'll be presenting some different statistics also from those different levels. And behavioral, it's kind of dependent on each individual participant on how they learn from the different interventions, and then how they then apply it to themselves, as well as when they work together. So individually, could be a change, but also when the parent and child are brought together after their interventions, could also create change. So each secondary school in Ottawa County will be contacted to see if they even have a sexual education program currently in their curriculum. If they do, great. We will review it and further decide if we need to implement the 3 R's curriculum from the Advocates for Youth, which I will go over in a little bit, as well as implementing Taking Parents Healthy Teens program. So if there is not a program currently in the curriculum, then we will definitely implement these. So then after the first year, there will be an evaluation to take place of the prevalence of programs. So if, say, out of 100 schools, if 20 of them have a program currently, and then after a year, 50 of them have a program, that'll be good. And so on and so forth. Same with the home-based programs, because you don't hear of that very often, as we will get into. So the length of the intervention, as previously stated, 1 year initially, and then it'll continue basically being that 1 year. 1 year meaning the lessons, which we will go over in a little bit. The lessons, it's not a whole year's worth of lessons. It'll be about a week or two, depending on what grade level, K through 12. And so those are about a week or two, but they could happen anywhere within that school year. And the home-based intervention's 8 weeks long, and that can take place at any time as well. So desired outcomes of this intervention program that we want would be to increase sexual education courses within the Ottawa County secondary school systems, as well as enhance relationships between parents and guardians and their children. Relationships meaning like just the way that they communicate about their sexual health, and so that they both feel comfortable having those conversations with one another. So the state of Michigan, just a quick little background with the needs assessment. Michigan has 83 counties, total population of almost 10 million. So of that, Ottawa County makes up about 250,000. people. And then of that, about 45,000 are students in public schools. So with that, even further, 25, about a quarter of the population is under 18 years old, and then just about 15% are 65 or older. And that's a pretty significant, and that's just within Ottawa County. Within the state of Michigan, it's a little less, as you can see. The 22% is less than 18, and then just about 16% is over 65. So Ottawa County has quite a bit of its population being young adolescents, young teens. With this, they are ranked number one of all counties in the state of Michigan in social and economic factors, and that includes having an 88% high school graduation rate compared to 81% being the state of Michigan's high school graduation rate. So now to the sexual education portion of the needs assessment. Only 24 states, as well as DC, require sex ed, which, as you know, less than half. But 34 states and DC require HIV education in schools. Many people would think that they're kind of hand in hand, and for the most part, they kind of are. But based on state and federal regulation, they're completely different, and yeah, so a lot of them do HIV, but not the sex ed. And there's only one state in the whole country that has requirements for both. So here's a quick breakdown of the state of Michigan and its racial distribution compared to Ottawa County's racial distribution. As you can see, if you just look at the bottom bullet, that is quite a big difference, about 10% difference, meaning the state of Michigan has about 3/4 population being white, whereas in Ottawa County, about 85% is white, which then brings me further to the public school review states that Ottawa County has a diversity score of 0 in comparison to the state's diversity score of 0.27. So what this score means is it's on a scale of 0 to 1, and the closer to 1 is more diverse. There's more diversity within that group of individuals. So having 0 means there's no diversity, which you can see. I mean, there's a little bit. There's about 10% Hispanic, 3 Asian, 1.6 non-Hispanic African American. But in comparison to the other side, 13.9% to 1.6. And this is these numbers up above are for the state of Michigan compared to public schools. So, and if I did not mention, there are 95 secondary schools in Ottawa County. So, the setting we will be focusing on with this intervention program is the secondary schools of Ottawa County in Michigan. And the mode of delivery for the students will be basically on-campus implementation by the teachers with incorporated homework. That also involves the parents. And for the parents, most of it is going to be at work implementation, as well as some homework for them as well, from the kids as well as their own. And what I mean by worksite implementation is basically during their lunches, they will, like lunches at work, they will undergo a half hour to an hour program, provided, like small group, provided by some educators that come in and do this. So, as we know from the 6 action planning steps, step 1, learn more. Got to learn more about the population that you'll be working in, and implementing this program. Basically, kind of just went over that. Step 2, determine goals and objectives. Increase the number of sexual education programs. So that is definitely the primary goal here, but also with that will be make sure they're in accordance with the national sexuality educational standards. Um, so basically, you don't just create something that's whatever you think is right and opinionated. It's been approved and regulated and is legitimate. And pause. All right, so with this being said, the program implemented must be medically accurate, age appropriate, culturally appropriate, and unbiased, which is a little difficult since we just discussed how there's no diversity in Ottawa County school system. It cannot promote religion, and it does include parental involvement, which is a key point in this whole program. So, and then the next big goal is to enhance communication skills between the parents and guardians and the children when it comes to sexual health. So not only making it more confident for the two of them to be able to have that kind of a conversation and hold that, but to be able to just, I mean, if you can talk about sexual health with one another, it really builds trust and confidence with one another to talk about almost anything. And so that, moving forward, is an objective of that, enhancing the communication abilities. So then step 3, identify influences, activities, and strategies. So we then move on to influences. Parents are usually a really good influence. Teachers can be a good influence. Doing things, just bringing those influences together to then come up with activities that are engaging and very hands-on and involving for all the participants. Because no one wants to sit in front of a lecture and just learn, because they'll either fall asleep, some people may gain it, but a lot of people don't absorb that information as well. So by coming up with these different groups and influences, you'll be able to facilitate really good activities and kind of mitigate those boring lectures and the uninterest of the participants. So coming up with different strategies to make this approach better. So with that being said, this logic model, the input, so there's the inputs, which then provides the activities, which we just discussed, so from the parents, teachers, or the representatives from intervention organization that we will be using, which we'll be discussing here in a minute. That provides their brainstorming, and everything provides activities. So like I said, just not like lectures, but just bringing everyone together, whether it's in a small group setting or one-on-one. It really helps you connect well and actually learn and absorb the information. So then from that leads to the initial effects. So it brings out a positive attitude towards the topic. So you're more willing to learn about sexual education and more willing to understand it, because it's starting to make sense and it doesn't seem so boring or frightening. So once that occurs, that then leads to intermediate effects. So it alters the application within that individual on how they utilize those positive thoughts. So yes, now they're willing to learn, they're willing to accept sexual education in their life, and now they're starting to implement it in their life, which is good and part of the main goal that we want. And finally, long-term outcomes. Basically, you're seeing the effects of it. So you know, you understand, you've learned all about the sexuality health over the years, and you practice the things that you learned and you're living a healthy lifestyle. And then back to the children, parent, guardian relationship. That is, you don't just see effort being put forth, but you actually see it happening unintentionally. And it's good, and the relationship is healthy and strong. So, identifying resources. So, with this, what I have is the Advocates for Youth website here. And let me move me out of the way. So this website is very useful. It has so many resources, and it has basically everything that you need to implement the sexual education program. Now this is the school-based program. I will get to the home-based in a little bit. So where it all begins, so if you read here, it fully meets the National Sexuality Education Standards. Those are the national standards that we were discussing earlier. It's inclusive for all sexual orientations, gender identities, and what they do is, what's really cool is it's free. So that means that the actual course is free. The only thing that they charge is for the training for the teachers, and they just charge for airfare and putting them up in a hotel. And that's about it. And they usually, it's about one instructor for anywhere from 10 to 30 individuals. So that should be fairly affordable, and just getting that in-person, hands-on teaching is very, very beneficial. So yeah, this website, it's in the resources and the end of the PowerPoint. I'll leave that up. Take a look, check it out. It's pretty great. So, moving on back to the PowerPoint. So now we develop a specific plan. So basically what they recommend is at each of these different grade levels, you'll see a different number of lessons each year. So as I was stating earlier, it is a year-long process, but it doesn't necessarily take the full year. So like in kindergarten, there's 3 lessons that they recommend to be taught, and that can be implemented anytime during that year, and then going on. But how it works is basically from kindergarten to 12th grade, you are taking a sexual education course. Now, it doesn't have to be a separate course, which is why it's titled the Human Development, because it can be incorporated in different classes. And as you can see, 7th through 9th grade, those kind of pick up in the number of lessons. And that's typically around the puberty age, and it's really important to implement more there. So, an example of the implementation now. So as you can see here, up here we've got, this is grades K through 2nd grade. And so various topics, and then if it has a 1 by it, that's one lesson under that topic in that grade. So as we saw earlier, kindergarten is 3, 1st grade has 3. So kindergarten, we've got anatomy and physiology, health, relationships, personal safety, identity, pregnancy and reproduction, and healthy relationships, and so on. And then these topics stay the same for the most part here for grades 3 through 5, and then, oh, I'm sorry, they're the same for all. It's just the number of lessons. Now, I'll show you here. So then we've got grades 6 through 8 and 9 through 12. And then if you look here, this is a breakdown of grade 9. So, as we previously saw here, grade 9 has 11. And see, 5 in pregnancy and reproduction. So, if you look, all these, grade 9, are the different topics and lesson titles. And then this is just an overview. they actually have the actual lessons that you can go in and learn to teach and incorporate how you please into your curriculum. Now, what's really great about this is to prove that it's regulated by like the National Sexual Education Standards, or it's standardized, are these numbers right here. These are basically their proof of standardization for each different concept and topic, which I thought was really great. So now for the at-home based program, I don't have a slide for it because it's pretty straightforward. How it works is you have a group of people at work that want to get together and do this, or just a group of friends that can meet up in a nearby place, and for 8 weeks they show up for that half hour to an hour, and basically it's like a hands-on, involving, engaging meeting with a representative from the Teach Parents Healthy Children organization, and they help build confidence and communication skills, and they do a lot of role playing to help them feel more confident talking to their children. And then every other week or so they'll have homework assignment to go to do and participate with their children and to bring back the next week. And incentives for keep coming back and not being late is they feed them lunch. So it's a really great program, again, free of charge. They show up, and if they're coming from far away, they may have to pay travel, but really great program there. Now, evaluation of these. Basically, we just came up with questions to reflect. So basically, were the number of recommended sex and HIV education for students incorporated into the curriculum for fall of 19. So this whole next year, the school year of 2018, is when we'd be gathering the data of how many schools have sexual education courses currently, how many don't, if they're good, if they're not, and then we can compile all that information to further implement. So that gives us a whole year, and then we implement it in fall of 19. So afterwards, we see if they actually adhered to the program with the number of lessons per year to do. And then we also can see how many parents participated as well. So then also we can ask if the program's medically accurate, age appropriate, culturally appropriate, unbiased, and all that, which if they adhere to the 3 R's program by Advocates for Youth, it very well should be. And then finally, did the parent and guardian involvement help the children's relationship with that parent and guardian? And did it help with their understanding of the material? So basically, back to the behavioral factor. Did it sink in? Did they get anything of it? At the end of the logic model, they have long-term outcomes from it. And those are all in subjective questionnaires that are given out. So then revisions to these would be 95 schools is a lot. So during the early stages, maybe handpick or randomly select a dozen, pick a smaller sample size, and see how that works to implement, and go from there, depending on how many people you have to work with to implement this. But it's all donated time. So the only cost of this program is, in fact, the travel and room and board for the representatives that come in to teach before the school year. Next, the next bullet wasn't really measurable, so it should just be overseen by an administrator to make sure that everything is, being implemented as it should. Because if they're following the program, but they're kind of giving a little twist, then there's a chance it may not be medically accurate or culturally appropriate. So having someone oversee it and kind of check it off that they're doing all right is a very good evaluation method. And finally, like I said before, this measure is very subjective, but having a more in-depth questionnaire before and after, having a baseline, not just having a baseline of how many schools are implementing a program and how many aren't. So having that behavioral questionnaire to see how the participants take the intervention. And dissemination. So back to that first bullet, starting small and expanding is probably would be the best way to go about this. And going from that, data proves itself. So if you have data from a small group of people and it turns out well, that's good. You can feed off of those good results, quality results. But there's probably also going to be not so quality results or not so significant results, which can be improved upon. And sometimes improvements are very inviting. And especially in this kind of area, sexual education in schools, it's very important, just like the physical activity approach, just different. So, yeah, and here are the references that I had. Hope you enjoyed the presentation and learned something. Thank you.